In the 1920s, Stalin funded a Soviet scientist's attempt to create a half-human, half-ape hybrid that could be a fearless, pain-resistant super soldier. The program was entirely real. This was not a rumor. This was not a Cold War propaganda story. A real scientist with real Soviet government funding conducted real experiments attempting to create a human-chimpanzee hybrid. The records survived. The story is documented, and it is one of the most disturbing chapters in the history of science. Ilya Ivanovich Ivanov was not a fringe figure. He was Russia's most celebrated expert in artificial insemination, a legitimate, respected scientist who had successfully developed techniques for crossbreeding horses and had produced the first artificial insemination of a horse in 1899. By the 1920s, he had an international reputation. He also had a theory that humans and great apes were close enough genetically that hybridization might be possible through artificial insemination. The scientific question genuinely interested him. What made his interest dangerous was the regime that came to power in the Soviet Union. Stalin's government had a specific use for the idea. Soviet ideologues wanted to prove that humans were simply a form of animal, undermining religious belief in the special status of humanity. A human-ape hybrid would do that, and separately, Soviet military planners were attracted to a different possibility. A soldier that felt no pain, feared no enemy, required minimal food, and could not be reasoned with or demoralized. A creature that was not quite a man, and not quite a beast. In 1925, Ivanov applied for and received Soviet government funding to conduct hybridization experiments. In 1926, Ivanov traveled to French Guinea in West Africa, where a French research institute maintained a colony of chimpanzees. He had permission from French colonial authorities to use the facility. His plan was straightforward: artificially inseminate female chimpanzees with human sperm. 3 female chimpanzees were inseminated over the course of his time in Guinea. None of the experiments produced a pregnancy. Ivanov returned to the Soviet Union. He proposed a second phase, inseminating human women with chimpanzee sperm. He had identified women who claimed to be willing volunteers, though historians have debated how genuinely voluntary this consent could have been, given the political environment of the Soviet Union in the 1920s. 5 women were identified. The experiment was approved. It was never carried out. Before it could begin, the chimpanzees at the Soviet facility died. Getting new animals would take years. The Soviet scientific and political climate was shifting, and Ivanov, who had staked his career on a program that had produced nothing, was running out of powerful friends. In December 1930, Ilya Ivanov was arrested by the Soviet secret police, the OGPU, precursor to the KGB. The charges were not related to his hybridization program. He was accused of being part of an anti-Soviet organization, the standard accusation used against academics who had fallen out of political favor. He was sentenced to exile in the Kazakh SSR. He died there in March 1932, 2 years into his sentence, from a stroke. He was 61 years old. His hybridization experiments had failed on every scientific measure. No hybrid was produced. No viable embryo. No evidence that the cross-species insemination had any biological effect at all. The Soviet government quietly buried the program. Official records were classified. For decades, the story was dismissed in the West as anti-Soviet propaganda. The documents confirming its existence were declassified after the fall of the Soviet Union. What Ivanov actually attempted to do places him in a disturbing category: a scientist who used legitimate credentials and real biological techniques to pursue an experiment that no ethical framework would permit today funded by a government that wanted a military product, in a political environment where refusal was not an option. The women who were approached as potential subjects for the second phase of the experiment, insemination with chimpanzee sperm, never gave evidence of genuine informed consent in any modern sense. They lived in Stalin's Soviet Union. Volunteering had a specific meaning in that context. The science itself was almost certainly impossible. Humans and chimpanzees share roughly 98.7% of their DNA. But the chromosomal and molecular differences are sufficient that hybridization through insemination is not considered biologically plausible by modern geneticists. Ivanov died not knowing whether his program was on the edge of a breakthrough or was never going to work at all. The Soviet Union moved on. The ape soldiers were never built. A legitimate scientist, real government funding, real experiments on real chimpanzees, a plan to inseminate human women that was only canceled because the animals died first, Stalin's secret program to breed human-ape hybrid soldiers. Not a legend, not propaganda. A documented chapter of Soviet science history that tells you something specific about what a government will authorize when it decides that results matter more than limits. Some programs fail because the science is wrong. Some fail because the ethics are wrong. This one had both problems. It still almost got started. Subscribe if you want more. See you in the next one.